Hello and welcome to Calypten News, your one stop for short and precise global news every day. Let's start today's briefing. Iran-Israel war escalates, direct strikes continue, casualties exceed 657 in Iran and 24 in Israel. A week into the war, Israel has launched widespread military strikes on Iran's nuclear and military sites, Natanz, Esfahan, Arak, Tehran, Karaj. Though facility damage is significant, experts note minimal risk of nuclear contamination, as most targets are non-operational or subterranean. However, the Bushehr reactor remains a major concern. Any hit there could cause severe radioactive exposure to Gulf states dependent on desalinated water. Iran retorted with a barrage of missiles and drones at Israeli cities, including Haifa and Beersheba, killing 24 civilians in Israel and at least 657 in Iran, including approximately 263 civilians. Diplomatic mediation has failed. Iran rejects U.S. talks unless attacks stop, and Israel continues strikes to neutralize nuclear and missile capabilities. U.S. President Trump has signaled a 2-week window before deciding on U.S. intervention. Israeli strike damages Iranian nuclear reactor. Arak heavy water facility hit. Radiation risks monitored. On June 19, Israel targeted Iran's Arak heavy water reactor, part of its plutonium production capabilities and originally integrated into the 2015 nuclear deal. Satellite images and the IAEA confirmed damage to key structures, including the distillation unit and reactor dome. The reactor was non-operational and had no nuclear fuel at the time, so the IAEA reports no immediate radiological danger. Israel stated the strike aimed to disable future weaponization ability. The reactor, meant for research and medical isotope production, has been partially inactive since sanctions, but retains some critical components. This attack is part of a broader campaign targeting Iran's nuclear infrastructure, with Israeli leadership citing concerns over potential weapons development. The IAEA continues to monitor nuclear sites closely due to environmental and safety risks. Trump gives Iran 2-week ultimatum: cease hostilities or face U.S. military action. A high-ranking White House official announced President Trump will decide within 2 weeks whether to enter the Israel-Iran conflict directly. The ultimatum follows a significant deployment of U.S. military assets, aircraft and naval vessels, to the Middle East. These forces could both support operations and become targets for Iran. The U.S. Embassy in Qatar elevated its security posture by restricting access to Al Udeid airbase. Trump faces pressure from both hawkish lawmakers and isolationists, as internal intelligence divides over Iran's nuclear ambitions. He's signaling U.S. leverage while leaving the final call pending a diplomatic breakthrough that hasn't materialized. Egypt proposes Iran-Israel ceasefire linked to Palestinian statehood talks. Egypt has submitted a ceasefire proposal to both Iran and Israel, tying any truce to renewed talks on Palestinian statehood. The initiative was presented during a high-level summit involving regional and international stakeholders. Under the plan, a temporary ceasefire would be the first step, followed by negotiations toward Palestinian sovereignty. Although regional leaders have welcomed Egypt's proposal as a constructive diplomatic track, neither Iran nor Israel have formally accepted it. Iranian officials argue the conflict must end before discussing new arrangements, while Israel has stressed that its demands for nuclear rollback must be met first. The proposal is now circulating among the UN Security Council and Arab League for further consideration. Rwandan opposition leader arrested, Victoire Ingabire detained for plotting unrest. Victoire Ingabire, a prominent Rwandan opposition figure who ran for president in 2010 and 2017, was arrested on June 21, 2025. Authorities accuse her of plotting unrest ahead of the upcoming presidential elections. Ingabire was arrested at her home in Kigali and transferred to Kigali Central Prison. Her supporters assert the charges are politically motivated, pointing to her vocal criticism of President Kagame's rule. Ingabire was previously imprisoned from 2010 to 2018 on charges related to genocide denial and insurrection, though she consistently denied wrongdoing. International human rights groups are now calling for transparent legal proceedings. India evacuates citizens from Israel, coordination underway for nationals in conflict zones. Amid escalating tensions in Israel, India has launched Operation Sindhu to evacuate nationals via land borders into safe neighboring nations, followed by repatriation flights. The Ministry of External Affairs is coordinating logistics, while the New Delhi embassy in Tel Aviv is facilitating evacuation transports. As of June 21, approximately 110 Indian students were brought from northern Israel into Armenia, and about 290 passengers landed in Delhi on repatriation flights. India has also opened its airspace for 3 chartered planes in the first phase, with plans for up to 1,000 evacuees. Coordination extends beyond Israel. India is helping Nepalese and Sri Lankan nationals stranded in Iran by facilitating cross-border assistance. Health and counseling support are being prepared for returnees. Pakistan nominates Trump for Nobel Peace Prize for role in India-Pakistan de-escalation. Sources: on June 21, 2025, Pakistan formally nominated former U.S. President Donald Trump for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize, praising his decisive diplomatic intervention during a recent India-Pakistan border crisis. The official statement, posted on the Pakistani government's X account, credited Trump with helping de-escalate hostilities and particularly noted that his intervention, including a White House meeting with the Pakistani army chief, helped negotiate a ceasefire. The deadline for nominations is January 31, 2026. The nomination follows India's disavowal of third-party mediation, as its foreign secretary emphasized that the ceasefire talks occurred directly between the countries. Russia-India finalized 2030 Economic Cooperation Pact. During a June 2025 summit, Russian leadership unveiled a sweeping economic roadmap aiming to raise bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030. With projections suggesting the figure might be reached as early as 2028. The agreement centers on deepening oil and gas exports from Russia to India, greater use of national currencies instead of the US dollar, removal of trade barriers, and joint infrastructure investment. Additionally, cooperation will span technology partnerships in IT and AI, as underscored by the Indian Chamber of International Business. The strategic partnership builds on existing defense cooperation, part of a broader effort to navigate Western sanctions. Trump brokers Congo-Rwanda truce. Formal talks begin June 27. President Trump, alongside Secretary of State Marco Rubio, announced that the U.S. successfully brokered a provisional peace treaty between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda. The announcement stated that representatives from both countries will sign the agreement in Washington on June 27. According to the statement, the treaty aims to halt hostilities and disarm rebel groups involved in the conflict in eastern Congo. China rolls out mandatory virtual ID system for internet control. China is implementing a nationwide cyberspace identity authentication system requiring citizens to link internet activity, social media, online services, to verified virtual IDs via a government-authorized app. The draft policy, currently open for public comment, envisions an alphanumeric ID, verified certificates, and associated digital credentials. Officials claim the system is intended to protect personal data, streamline public services, and bolster cybersecurity. Legal experts voice concern that the centralized system could stifle dissent and increase state surveillance by tracing users' online behavior. Historically, such reforms in China often proceed from draft to enforcement without substantial public revision. Finland exits landmine ban treaty, citing Russian threat. On June 19, 2025, Finland's parliament voted 157-18 to withdraw from the Ottawa Convention, which bans anti-personnel landmines. The government, citing security concerns due to proximity to an increasingly aggressive Russia since its 2023 NATO accession, argued that landmines could enhance border defense across its 1,340 kilometers frontier. Withdrawal will take effect 6 months after official UN notification. Finland joins Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania in exiting the treaty. International organizations, including the Red Cross, have warned of heightened humanitarian risks as Finland abandons long-standing mine clearance commitments and potentially reintroduces deadly mines in its defense posture. U.S. Fed signals July rate cut, Waller's comments. Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller, appointed by former President Trump, told CNBC on June 20 that the Fed could reduce interest rates as soon as July. He noted that the recent inflationary impact from tariffs appears temporary and that current indicators, like steady GDP growth and inflation close to the 2% target, support an early rate cut. However, Waller emphasized the Fed's independence, rejecting the notion that rate cuts should be driven by government borrowing needs. He described the neutral rate as 1.25 to 1.5%, suggesting the current 4.25 to 4.5% range is restrictive. The Fed holds its next meeting July 29 to 30. Within the FOMC, views are split. some forecasting no cuts this year, others 2 or more. Market odds for a July cut remain low, 15%, despite internal calls for action. Iran fires cluster bombs at Israel. UN condemns use of banned munitions. Haaretz reports that Iran launched cluster munitions over populated Israeli areas, its first such use in the conflict. Israel's military and its U.S. embassy confirmed a missile carrying dispersed bomblets, which pose high civilian risk due to unexploded ordnance. The weapon's design and deployment raise serious questions under international law. The UN formally condemned the use of banned cluster bombs and urged all parties to respect international humanitarian rules that prohibit this weapon near civilian centers. The incident escalates global concern over the conflict's humanitarian impact and may trigger further diplomatic repercussions. Largest password leak ever, 16 billion credentials exposed. Cybersecurity firm Cybernews has reported a massive compilation of over 16 billion login credentials, the largest collection ever. Data appears to combine older breach lists, including credentials from Google, Apple, Facebook, and others. While no single platform is believed to have been hacked recently, the compiled datasets aggregate historical leaks. Cybernews researchers stress the archive enables easier credential stuffing attacks, compromising accounts when users reuse passwords. Experts advise immediate password changes, activation of two-factor authentication, and protective steps for sensitive services like banking and email. Tech companies highlight that the leak reflects old breaches, not new compromises. Nigeria herder farmer clashes kill 150 plus in Benue State. An overnight attack in Yellowater, Benue State, left at least 150 dead, according to AP and Reuters citing survivors and officials. The violence is part of long-standing herder-farmer tensions, with suspected Fulani herdsmen ammunition firing and homes set ablaze, including a local market where families sought refuge. President Tinubu condemned the attack and deployed security forces to prevent further bloodshed. He visited Makurdi, met hospital patients, and pressed for arrests. Critics argue initial response was inadequate. Humanitarian agencies estimate up to 3,000 displaced, with homes, crops destroyed, and growing national concerns over continued rural violence in the Middle Belt. FATF flags crypto and shell firms financing weapons procurement. In its June 2025 update, the Financial Action Task Force, FATF, reported a worrying surge in misuse of cryptocurrencies and shell companies for weapon funding, especially for weapons of mass destruction, WMD. The report highlighted North Korea as a key actor, its crypto-linked operations netting up to $1.5 billion from exchanges like Bybit. FATF stressed that while 75% of jurisdictions have yet to fully comply with its standards, especially virtual asset service providers, there's increasing evidence that digital financial tools are being repurposed for illicit arms and proliferation financing. It urged global regulators to adopt stricter AML/CFT frameworks for virtual assets. UK heat wave alert, 600 plus deaths feared, London hospitals on standby. British health authorities have issued a critical national incident alert as the current heatwave is predicted to cause over 600 excess deaths. Temperatures in London are expected to exceed 40 degrees Celsius, rare in the UK. Hospitals across London are activating surge plans to manage heat stress emergencies, with elderly care homes also on high alert. Frontline medical staff have been directed to increase monitoring of vulnerable individuals. The Met Office and NHS are urging citizens to stay hydrated, avoid midday sun, and install temporary cooling measures. Officials say this heat wave is among the most severe in living memory. HIV prevention drug breakthrough, FDA approves Gilead's Yeztugo after 98% efficacy trials. On June 21, 2025, the US FDA granted approval to Gilead Sciences' long-acting injectable HIV prevention drug, Yeztugo, lenacapavir. The approval follows Phase 3 trials showing 98% efficacy at reducing transmission rates compared to placebo, marking a potential game-changer for HIV PrEP. Yeztugo is significant as it needs only biannual or quarterly dosing, addressing adherence issues tied to daily oral regimens. Common side effects include injection site pain and mild headaches, but no serious adverse events were reported. The approval also signals progress toward long-acting HIV therapies. Gilead plans to launch the drug in early 2026, with pricing and global access strategies pending. UK botulism outbreak from counterfeit Botox, dozens hospitalized. Health officials in northeast England reported dozens of hospitalizations linked to suspected counterfeit Botox injections. Patients experienced botulism symptoms, muscle weakness, swallowing difficulties, and blurred vision after receiving injections from an unlicensed practitioner. The NHS launched an immediate investigation. The product has been seized, and manufacturers are tracing its clandestine origin. Officials issued urgent warnings about undergoing cosmetic procedures without proper credentials and emphasized that botulism, while rare, is a life-threatening toxin. The local health protection board is monitoring for potential new cases. Congo floods kill 77+ in Equateur province. Severe flooding due to heavy rains in the Democratic Republic of Congo's Equateur province has resulted in at least 77 confirmed deaths as of June 21, with many more missing. Entire villages have been submerged, and mudslides and riverbank collapses have destroyed homes and displaced thousands. The local government is distributing food, medical aid, and emergency shelter, while the UN Flood Coordination Office is mobilizing international assistance. Inspectors warn more flooding is possible as wet season continues. Health teams have initiated measles and cholera vaccination campaigns to prevent disease outbreaks. Colon cancer death after misdiagnosis. UK man, 40, dies after symptoms mistaken for stress. A UK man in his early 40s died of advanced colon cancer after health officials initially misdiagnosed his stomach pain as stress and IBS. By the time scans revealed stage 4 cancer with liver metastases, it had become incurable. The coroner report raised concerns about missed diagnostic opportunities and late referral. Family members are urging public awareness of persistent gastrointestinal symptoms and pressuring the NHS to improve early detection protocols. Campaigners emphasize that rapid testing and proper referral pathways are critical, especially for patients under 50, urging clinicians not to overlook cancer risk due to age. U.S. Supreme Court upholds ban on gender-affirming care for minors, Tennessee. In a 6-3 decision announced June 21, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld Tennessee's law banning gender-affirming medical treatments, such as puberty blockers and hormone therapy, for transgender minors. The majority ruled that the state has a legitimate interest in regulating medical care for minors. The dissent, led by Justice Sotomayor, warned that the law encroaches on personal autonomy. The court did not address adoption or school sports provisions. Health advocates warned the decision could embolden similar laws in other conservative states. Tennessee Republicans have hailed the ruling as a victory for protecting children. Pro-Palestinian activist released from U.S. ICE detention. On June 21, a federal judge ordered the release of Mahmoud Khalil, a Palestinian-American student at Columbia, from ICE custody. Khalil had been detained for possessing a knife in his belongings after campus protests at Columbia University. The judge ruled that the detention was excessive and violates due process, ordering Khalil's release under electronic monitoring and setting a bond. The Columbia University community celebrated the decision, and supporters say it sets an important precedent involving rights of protesters in immigration contexts. ICE declined immediate comment. UK legalizes assisted dying for terminally ill adults. The UK Parliament's House of Commons passed the Assisted Dying Bill on June 21, permitting terminally ill adults expected to live less than 6 months to request medical assistance to die. The legislation includes strict safeguards. 2 doctors must confirm diagnosis and mental competency, a review panel, and a 14-day waiting period. If returned from the Lords, a final legislative vote could follow by September. Disability rights groups raise concerns about subjective interpretations of quality of life. The bill has strong backers, like former PM May, and indicates a societal shift in end-of-life autonomy. Thailand busts $1.2 million fraud ring. 13 foreigners arrested. Thai economic police arrested 13 foreign nationals as part of a fraud syndicate that scammed investors out of approximately $1.2 million. The ring promoted a fake online trading platform promising high returns via email and social media advertisements. Victims, including locals and expats, were lured into automated forex trading accounts rigged to show false profits. When they attempted withdrawals, they found their accounts frozen. Authorities executed simultaneous raids in Bangkok, seizing bank documents, laptops, and cash. The suspects face charges including computer fraud, money laundering, and transnational crime. Officials are warning the public to perform more due diligence on online investment offers. Putin vows to take all of Ukraine, signals new offensive on Sumy. Russian President Vladimir Putin declared that all of Ukraine is ours, reiterating his long-standing territorial claims amid rising military tensions. He warned of a new offensive targeting the northeastern region's strategic city of Sumy, accusing Ukraine of hosting NATO provocations near Russian borders. Putin emphasized Russia's historical rights to Ukrainian lands and stated that national security imperatives demanded action. The announcement comes as Ukrainian forces brace for intensified assaults and reinforced defenses. EU leaders condemned the remarks as a blatant escalation. Analysts caution the rhetoric may be aimed at rallying domestic support or pressuring Ukraine's Western allies during ongoing diplomatic talks. Armenia-Turkey border reopening talks amid regional tensions. High-level Armenian and Turkish officials held groundbreaking talks this week seeking to normalize relations and reopen the closed border, a move largely prevented by historical tensions and regional instability. The resumption was partly sparked by external pressure due to the Iran-Israel conflict, which raised concerns about wider regional fragmentation. Leaders discussed reciprocal visa-free travel, joint customs checkpoints, and potential energy trade agreements. Despite the diplomatic thaw, both sides acknowledged obstacles stemming from mutual distrust and the Nagorno-Karabakh legacy. The negotiations continue in a follow-up session next month, with European observers offering to mediate technical aspects should political momentum grow. China reaffirms Hong Kong stability pledge, security essential for prosperity. In an official statement, China's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office reiterated that national security is the bedrock of Hong Kong's economic and social stability, citing the recent region-wide unrest amid the Iran-Israel conflict. They reaffirmed plans to fully implement national security legislation, including oversight of NGOs, stricter censorship and data regulations. Hong Kong's chief executive echoed the call, saying only a safe and secure city can maintain its role as a global financial hub. Beijing also noted upcoming security enhancement workshops for civil servants and real-time cyber monitoring upgrades to safeguard against foreign interference. India halts basmati exports to Iran as conflict disrupts trade. India has officially halted basmati rice exports to Iran, citing logistical and security challenges amid the current conflict. Customs officials confirmed no export clearances have been issued since mid-June. This disruption has left Iranian importers scrambling for alternate suppliers, triggering domestic price hikes. India's Commerce Ministry is reportedly shifting focus to alternative maritime routes, such as Chabahar port, to stabilize trade flows. Industry insiders warn shipments to other West Asian destinations have also slowed due to container shortages and insurance rate spikes. India is reportedly in transport discussions with Iran to reopen trade through overland corridors. Yemeni fishermen freed by Puntland after illegal fishing detention. A dozen Yemeni fishermen were released this week by Puntland authorities after spending 2 weeks in detention for entering Puntland waters. The group was rescued from a dilapidated skiff, but had no formal permit, prompting piracy and immigration concerns. Puntland's Minister of Fisheries confirmed the fishermen were in good health and repatriated them by sea to Yemen's east coast. The incident underscores ongoing tensions around Somalia's self-governing regional authority and unregulated fishing operations. Puntland simultaneously launched a public awareness campaign targeting Yemeni communities to highlight maritime boundary rules and deter illegal incursions. SoftBank proposes $1 trillion US-based AI hub with TSMC and White House link. SoftBank Group, under the leadership of Masayoshi Son, is pitching a $1 trillion AI superhub for the U.S. market in talks with TSMC and White House economic advisors. The plan envisions semiconductor fabs, data centers, R&D campuses, and startup incubators across multiple states. The initiative is proposed as part of SoftBank's asset portfolio refocus, aiming to provide American AI firms domestic chip manufacturing resources. Sources indicate commitments from TSMC to co-invest, with funding partially secured via private-public partnerships. The proposal is under preliminary review by U.S. industrial policy task forces evaluating strategic supply chain investments. OPEC Plus holds oil output steady. Putin says no change despite price surge. At the latest OPEC Plus ministerial meeting, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and other members agreed to maintain current production levels, rejecting calls for increased output despite recent price volatility. Russian Energy Minister Putin argued markets remain balanced and cautioned that excess supply could harm budget-dependent member states. Brent crude prices settled near $85 per barrel in response. Analysts suggest the decision was motivated by geopolitical risk hedging and ongoing energy security concerns. The group also reaffirmed commitment to gradual annual compliance, dismissing speculation of major policy shifts. U.S. Steel acquired by foreign entity. Iconic U.S. Steel Corporation finalized a deal to be acquired by Liberty Steel, a UK-based metals firm chaired by Sanjeev Gupta, for approximately $14 billion. The acquisition includes U.S. mills in Pennsylvania and Ohio and creates a vertically integrated global steel supply network. U.S. Steel CEO David Burritt called the deal transformational, citing expanded capacity and access to international markets. The deal includes labor protections, with existing contracts honored and commitments to environmental improvements. U.S. regulators are reviewing antitrust and national security implications, but the transaction is projected to close by early 2026. Harvard's 15% research cost cap overturned by court. A Massachusetts Superior Court has struck down Harvard University's 15% overhead cap on external research, deeming the limit arbitrary and capricious. The cap had been approved by the university's governing board but heavily contested by multiple research labs who argued it would undermine funded projects and restrict indirect cost recovery. The judge found Harvard hadn't justified why a uniform rate was reasonable across diverse disciplines. The ruling orders Harvard to restore negotiated cost rates under federal grants. University officials are reviewing the decision and mulling appeal, while faculty and finance offices hailed the judgment. Iran urges WhatsApp ban citing security flaws. Iran's Ministry of ICT has formally encouraged users to remove WhatsApp from their devices, alleging unpatched vulnerabilities that enable foreign monitoring of user data. The announcement also claims the app leaks metadata, endangering national security interests of Iran. Officials recommended switching to domestically controlled messaging platforms or other secure applications. TechCrunch reports the move is consistent with broader efforts to carve out an internet-sovereign environment, reducing reliance on Western tech. Cybersecurity experts cited in the article consider the claim partly political, pointing out that no new vulnerabilities have been confirmed in WhatsApp's recent patches. International Yoga Day, King Charles endorses, Norwegian ambassador does headstand. King Charles issued a special message marking International Yoga Day, praising yoga for promoting health and environmental harmony. In New Delhi, the Norwegian ambassador to India symbolically performed a headstand during the chief event. Charles's message, delivered via video, highlighted yoga's ability to foster peace, cultural understanding, and unity across nations. He referenced its growing global appeal and its relevance in modern life. The ambassador's headstand was described as a gesture celebrating Indo-Norwegian cultural ties. The event featured multiple dignitaries in Delhi and included mass yoga sessions as part of the annual 21st of June festivities. Florida Panthers win Stanley Cup, defeat Edmonton Oilers. The Florida Panthers captured the 2025 Stanley Cup after a thrilling rematch against the Edmonton Oilers, winning Game 7 in overtime. Panthers captain Alex Barkov scored the championship-winning goal, completing a come-from-behind series victory, 4-3. The team celebrated its second Stanley Cup win, first since 1996. Goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky was named the finals MVP for his outstanding performance, stopping 35 of 38 shots. Florida fans flooded downtown arenas, and coach Paul Morris praised his team's resilience and defense. Edmonton's Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl received recognition but fell just short of securing a repeat. BTS reunited after final military member discharged. K-pop supergroup BTS officially reunited after all 7 members completed South Korea's mandatory military service. Jin, the last member, was discharged on June 21, quietly exiting the army without formal ceremony. The group issued a collective statement confirming reunification and plans for new music and projects later in 2025. BTS members thanked ARMY and fans worldwide for their patience. Industry analysts anticipate upcoming tours and multimedia releases. Social media buzzed as ARMY celebrated the group's return. While military service was staggered for group continuity, the final phase marks the next BTS chapter and renewed artistic output. Golden Girls, feud confirmed. Producer reveals Betty White B. Arthur tension. A long-rumored tension between sitcom stars Betty White and B. Arthur has been confirmed by a former Golden Girls producer. In a new interview, the producer described how White and Arthur had conflicting comedic styles and differing views on script delivery. While on screen they portrayed warm companionship, off-screen, they reportedly clashed over creative decisions. White is said to have felt overshadowed at times, while Arthur prioritized character authenticity, leading to disagreements resolved during production breaks. The producer emphasized the actresses maintained professional decorum on set despite personal friction, attributing it to high artistic standards. SpaceX Starship explosion during static fire test. During a pre-launch static fire test of SpaceX's Starship prototype on June 20, a vehicle exploded while still secured on the launch pad. Elon Musk confirmed via X, formerly Twitter, that the vehicle reached 100% thrust before structural failure occurred seconds later. Although there were no injuries and no release of hazardous materials, the pad sustained minor damage. The explosion is being compared to earlier incomplete burns, with SpaceX attributing the failure to a malfunction in the thrust vector control system. The incident will lead to adjustments in the assembly line and additional stress testing before the next flight. Grenade thrown at Norwegian ambassador's residence in Israel. A grenade was thrown at the Oslo-based Norwegian ambassador's residence in East Jerusalem late on June 20. Security personnel on site heard a loud explosion. Fortunately, no casualties or major property damage occurred. Israeli police and border police surrounded the area, recovered fragment evidence, and launched an immediate investigation. Authorities suspect a politically motivated attack, with initial arrests reported. The Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs strongly condemned the incident, and Israel pledged a swift, full investigation. The event prompted heightened security protocols at diplomatic residences in the city. Heineken brewery seized by rebels in DR Congo conflict zone. Rebel forces in the Ituri province of the Democratic Republic of Congo seized a Heineken brewery, halting production and intimidating local staff. Witnesses report soldiers disarmed guards and began operations under rebel oversight. The state-owned brewery had recently reopened after COVID-related closures. Local authorities condemned the seizure, calling it a criminal act threatening both jobs and trade. International business observers warned the takeover signals deep insecurity in eastern DR Congo and poses risks to foreign investment. Calls are mounting for UN peacekeeping forces to restore control and protect civilian infrastructure. UK rail chaos as heatwave buckles tracks. Extreme heat, with daytime temperatures approaching 40 degrees Celsius, caused rail tracks across southern England to buckle, leading to major service cancellations on June 21. Network Rail issued severe speed restrictions, and Southern, Great Western Railway, and Thameslink suspended numerous trains. Passengers faced hours-long delays and cancellations. Emergency crews worked overnight to replace affected sections, but torrid conditions hampered progress. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps urged travelers to avoid non-essential rail travel, while the Department for Transport activated the National Heatwave Plan. Critics called for better infrastructure resilience funding as climate change intensifies extreme weather. Khamenei posts viral message on women, urging family duties during conflict. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, published a widely shared post directed at Iranian women amidst the Israel-Iran conflict. He emphasized that women's first mission is to build homes and raise virtuous children, urging them to resist Western cultural influence. The message framed traditional family roles as central to national resilience during wartime. Social media users reacted with mixed responses. Some praised the emphasis on cultural values, while others criticized attempts to restrict women's roles. Analysts suggest the post is part of broader messaging aimed at reinforcing conservative gender norms in a time of crisis. India accelerates Chabahar port development to counter Gwadar. India announced an accelerated development plan for Chabahar port in southeastern Iran to enhance trade through the Gulf and offset Pakistan's Gwadar port, backed by China. The Ministry of Commerce approved expedited funding for new container terminals, customs modernization, and energy infrastructure upgrades. Officials noted Chabahar's strategic advantage in providing Central Asian and Afghan trade access. A finalized memorandum includes India financing up to $150 million, with multilateral financing possible from Asian lenders. Indian authorities confirmed environmental assessments are underway and construction is expected to begin by late 2025, with operational scaling through 2027-28. U.S. Senate bill challenges Trump's war powers, required congressional approval for Iran strikes. A bipartisan group of U.S. senators introduced a bill this week aimed at limiting presidential authority to launch military strikes on Iran without explicit congressional approval. The legislation, co-sponsored by Republicans and Democrats, would require the president to submit a timeline and objectives before taking any action and await congressional authorization. The move comes amid rising tensions in the Middle East and concerns over unchecked executive military powers. Senate supporters argue the bill strengthens checks and balances, ensuring that decisions to use force remain in the hands of elected representatives. Critics counter that rapid crises may inhibit timely response. The bill was referred to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for debate. Global condemnation of Iran's use of cluster bombs, 120-plus nations issue statement. The United Nations released a statement on June 21 signed by 120-plus member states, condemning Iran's use of cluster munitions against populated Israeli areas. The statement highlighted that such weapons, which scatter bomblets over wide zones, disproportionately harm civilians and leave unexploded ordnance. The declaration urges all parties to respect international humanitarian law and calls for transparent investigation and accountability. The UN Secretary-General warned that continued deployment of such indiscriminate weapons heightens conflict risks and undermines future peace efforts. Signatories include Western and many global South countries, underscoring the widespread international alarm over the escalation. Canada imposes tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles amid global trade dispute. Canada's Minister of International Trade announced on June 21 a 20% tariff on imported Chinese electric vehicles, EVs, aligning closely with similar moves by the United States and European Union. The tariffs, scheduled to take effect in August, aim to protect Canada's emerging domestic EV industry from unfair competition, including alleged Chinese subsidies and price dumping. Canadian officials defended the policy, citing concerns over market distortion and national security in critical tech sectors. China denounced the tariffs as a protectionist measure and vowed to pursue countermeasures through the WTO. Automaker representatives urged caution, emphasizing the need for Canada to build its own EV supply chain before imposing such costs. Japan's population hits record low, sparking economic concern. Japan reported its population reached a record low of 124.6 million in April 2025, marking the seventh consecutive year of decline. The data from the Ministry of Internal Affairs showed a steep drop in births, only 810,000 last year, contrasted by 1.67 million deaths. Urban areas like Tokyo saw the sharpest downturn amid aging demographics. Economic analysts caution the population crisis may strain pensions, healthcare, and labor-intensive sectors. The government plans targeted measures, childcare support, remote work incentives, and immigration reforms. Local officials voiced concern over rural, ghost towns, as shrinking populations compound declines in local services and economic vitality. Great Barrier Reef records worst ever bleaching event, scientists warn of collapse. Reef monitoring groups reported that the Great Barrier Reef has experienced its most extensive mass coral bleaching to date, affecting over 90% of the reef during the latest marine heatwave. Water temperatures soared more than 2 degrees Celsius above historical averages. Scientists described the event as unprecedented and devastating, warning of a potential ecosystem collapse if rapid cooling and recovery don't occur soon. The bleaching has killed off many sensitive species, reducing biodiversity. Researchers stress the need for urgent global emissions cuts, improved water quality, and reef restoration projects. Marine biologists highlighted that younger coral and deeper reef areas show early signs of resilience, but recovery will require years, if not decades. That is all for today. See you next time. If you find our news to be useful, don't forget to drop a comment and subscribe to our channel. That is all for